Three pros that come along with the Inov8 Bare XF V2 is number one, I think this can be a pretty good beginner-friendly barefoot shoe for anybody who wants to get into working out with barefoot shoes or just get a little more barefoot with their workouts. The reason why I love this shoe for beginners is number one, you have a slightly thicker insole. So you get this boomerang footbed in this shoe. It does run a little bit thicker, so it gives you a bit more protection, but then also the shoe isn't so overtly wide to where if you've been wearing narrower shoes, you're gonna necessarily feel like you're swimming in it. The shoe does a really good job of hugging the foot in like a sock-like fashion, so it shouldn't feel too off-putting regarding width if you've been traditionally used to wearing narrower shoes. The second pro that comes along with this shoe is its overall performance in the gym and just for casual wear. The shoe is pretty dang comfortable when it comes to its overall flexibility and maneuverability. The upper mesh breathes really well up here in the forefoot, and the outsole grips pretty well. You also have a buffed midfoot protection here for additional lockdown, so I do like that as well with this model when it comes to its performance in the gym. It grips well, gives you enough protection, and it gives you a bit more durability around the midfoot compared to the Bare XF. The third pro that comes along with the shoe is if you want a barefoot shoe for CrossFit, I think this can be a pretty good option to look into. With this model, you do have a little bit more protection here with the rope tech around the midfoot, with the outsole wrapping up higher on the medial side and over here on the lateral side. And again, you do have this Met cradle that has been increased. It almost feels similar to what's in the F-Lite, which a lot of folks have enjoyed because it hasn't broken down super fast on them. And then just from an overall performance standpoint with CrossFit specifically, I do feel like the boomerang footbed in the shoe gives you a little bit more responsiveness, balance, and protection for WODs that are going to be super varied. So if again you are getting into barefoot shoes for that style of training, I think this model can be a good option to go with in that lens. All right, so a few cons that come along with the Bare XF V2 is number one, if you have an exceptionally wide foot, you might find that you actually spill over a little bit in this model. I think this shoe is going to be best served for foot widths up to like a 2 or 3E foot width. If you're wider, you might find that you actually spill over the mesh a little bit more. Doesn't mean you can't wear it, it just means that you might be pressing into the upper of this model more, and there are other options out there that I think fit a little bit wider, like the Bare XF Pro from Inov8, that's going to fit a little bit wider in my opinion and give you a bit more upper volume. The second con that I could see folks having with this shoe is that I find it to run short. So not necessarily an overall con, but definitely something that I think is going to throw some people through a loop when they are buying for the first time. With this shoe, I would say most everyone size up a half size. I am pretty much pushing at the end of the toe box here. I have an E to 2E foot width. I generally size true in a 10 US. Go up a half size to a full size in this model. If you have an exceptionally wide foot, I would say a full size, honestly, just to play it safe. The third con that comes along with the shoe is if you want as much ground feel as possible. If you take out this boomerang footbed, because it is going to give you a little bit more cushion compared to other barefoot shoes, you don't have a finished internal footbed in here. You have a bit more of a foamy texture. That means that if you're training without the insole of this shoe, like you can do in some other models that have that finished internal footbed, you can break this shoe down, in my opinion, a little bit faster because it has like this foam material, a little bit softer. So that said, if you need maximum ground feel, there are better options out there. Look into Vivo Barefoot, look into the Bare XF Pro. Those will all be a little bit better regarding lower stack heights, more ground feel, etc. But now let's talk about the performance of the Bare XF V2. All right, to break down the performance of the Bare XF V2, I'll discuss how these shoes do for lifting, cross-training and CrossFit, short runs, and daily wear. When it comes to lifting, I really enjoy this shoe. Now, that comes with some caveats. If you are a barefoot purist and you want as much ground feel as possible, this will actually probably not be your best bet for lifting. Now, I don't think you're gonna lose stability going super heavy in this shoe, but it's not gonna give you that same amount of harsh ground feel that you're after with the boomerang footbed. Now, that said, I do like the footbed for a lot of my lifting. So for example, if I'm doing cleans or any form of strength work that's a little bit more dynamic, like walking lunges and whatnot, I actually like the footbed. It gives me a little bit more comfort and cushion without sacrificing too much ground feel. So that's why I also love this shoe for beginners who are getting into barefoot shoes. It's just not as much of a harsh shift when you're shifting into this model. And then another thing to think about with this shoe for lifting is if you have that exceptionally wide foot that I talked about in my cons, you might have some spillover if you're doing power focused exercises. So think like power cleans or full cleans. If you don't necessarily max out the width of the shoe, you should be plenty fine in this model, but keep in mind that that could be a possibility. Overall though, I think if you like a sock-like fit with your shoe for lifting and you want a nice load ground feel, but a little bit of cushion, that's where the shoe makes a lot of sense. For cross training and CrossFit, I also really enjoy this shoe. With the Met cradle, you get a little bit more support here through the midfoot. I don't feel like it hinders at all with the performance and the flexibility and feel of the shoe, and the forefoot up here is lightweight and breathable. Now, some caveats here is that if you want to use a shoe for CrossFit, I like them a lot for CrossFit. Go with the lighter colorway. I have already started getting my toe box a little bit dirty from doing burpees in my gym, so you might want to go with the darker colorway if, for example, you know your box programs a lot of burpees in your workouts, or if you do a lot of like prone to get up style training with your cross training, there's some food for thought there. But overall, this shoe I think does a really good job. Feels very sock and cleat-like on the foot, and if you're into that and you like having that taper through the midfoot and whatnot, you'll enjoy that with this shoe. When it comes to short runs in this shoe, it does a pretty good job. If you're tacking on some intervals pre or post workout, or just using this shoe for casual short runs, I like them. I like them actually more than other barefoot shoes. Now do note, I am not your barefoot shoe running purist here. I am not doing 5K plus mileage with my barefoot shoes. But if I do have intervals programmed in my workouts that range from 400, 300 to 600, 800 meters, etc., I will run in my barefoot shoes if I have them on. I just try not to do a ton of mileage because with all of my other training, tends to beat me up a little bit more. So all that to say, I want to disclose that for short runs, this shoe does a good job, but for longer runs, they'll probably work, but I'm also probably not the best resource to ask for that. For daily wear, the shoe does a pretty good job. Now, my only caveats with this shoe for daily wear is obviously making sure you get your size right, size up so they don't feel too snug. And then also for my friends out there who have flatter midfoots, or they need more width in the toe box, or just want a ton of width with a ton of volume in the upper or the forefoot, this model might not be your best bet. But honestly, when it comes to just overall comfort and breathability for casual wear and daily wear, this shoe can get the job done. So it's one of those shoes that's like really so-so depending on how you want to wear them outside of the gym and if that's a big prerogative of yours. All right, so now who should buy the Inov8 Bare XF V2? Number one, if you are a beginner to barefoot shoes, I think this can be a pretty dang good option to go with. Number two, if you like having a shoe that feels very sock-like on the foot and you traditionally vibe with those types of barefoot shoes, this can be a really good option to go with. It honestly has that nice foot-like structure to it, so I think you'll feel right at home in this model. It moves really well with the foot as well. And then number three, if you have a narrow medium to E to 2E foot width, this shoe will also work really well for your overall needs regarding its width and how it's going to hug the forefoot. Now, who should pass on this shoe? Number one, my barefoot shoe purists. If you want as much ground feel as possible and as little stack height as possible, you may want to go for a different option because again, when you take that boomerang footbed out, which is a little bit thicker with its foam, you do have an internal construction that's not fully finished with a foamy feel, could cause some breakdown a little bit faster if that's you. Number two, if you're somebody who wants a shoe with less midfoot taper, you'll probably want to pass on this model as well. You're not going to notice it a ton, but I think you will have a bit of spillover in the shoe because of that taper. And then number three, if you have a 4E plus foot width, you might want to pass on this shoe as well. I'm not convinced you're gonna have enough forefoot room, even if you do size up in this shoe. All right, when it comes to the sizing and fit of the Bare XF V2, if you have a narrow, medium, and slightly wider foot width, go up a half size. Just default to it. I'm telling you right now, I don't think many feet, in my opinion, are gonna fit true to size in this shoe. Go up a half size and play it safe. A little bit of extra toe box room honestly isn't a bad thing, especially in a barefoot shoe too, because you do want a little bit more room to let those toes do their things. If you have a 3E plus foot width, go up a full size. That's gonna be your best bet. I'm still not convinced you're gonna have enough width, but it will be a safer bet than going true to size in this model. So all that to say, size up a half size to a full size. If you need additional clarity there, drop a comment down below and just let me know some thoughts on some relative sizing, like what shoes do you currently wear and what size, what brands, etc. And I could hopefully help suggest better options so you decrease the risk of a return. So when it comes to the weight, heel to toe drop, and insole in the Bare XF V2, for my size 10 shoe here, we have a weight of 7.80 ounces. The heel to toe drop of this shoe obviously sits at 0 millimeters, and then you also have this boomerang footbed once again in the shoe, so it is a little bit thicker from other insoles that you get in other barefoot shoes. All right, so now let's break down the construction of the Inov8 Bare XF V2. Up here on the forefoot, you have an extended outsole layer that wraps up. Then you have a mesh upper that wraps from the tip of the forefoot into the midfoot, and it kind of extends into the heel, but it is very covered by this more rigid TPU Met cradle here. It's like this rubbery TPU vibe that wraps over the midfoot and the medial and lateral side of this shoe. This model does have a light internal toe guard here, so it does give you a little bit of structure up here around the toe box. And then looking at the midfoot of the shoe, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 core eyelets that go up with a 6 back here for lace lock. You do have a gusseted tongue that has an additional loop, and it is a padded mesh, so it does feel pretty good when it's hugging the midfoot. The boot itself has a lower profile, and there's a padded mesh back here, so it does give you a nice cushion to its feel. Then you have some Inov8 branding here on the lateral and medial heel, and then back here on the external heel. Looking at the outsole, you have a full rubber outsole. You have that Metaflex up here in the forefoot, and then you also have that like subtle fascia band feature that Inov8 uses in a lot of their shoes. And then once again, this model does have that removable boomerang insole, which again is this TPU beady midsole that does have a slightly more high density feel to it. All right guys, that wraps up my review of the Inov8 Bare XF V2. I like this shoe a little bit better than the V1, and that's because the Met Cradle is a little bit more aggressive and the shoe still maintains its nice flexible feel without necessarily losing that with the additional bulk and durability of this model. It's also a good option, I think, for beginners. If you have additional questions on this shoe though, drop a comment down below.